If you are over 70 years old, I want you to stop scrolling for the next 60 seconds because what I am about to tell you could change the way you sleep for the rest of your life. Millions of older adults go to bed every single night guessing. They guess what time they should sleep. They guess why they wake up at 3 in the morning. They guess whether something is wrong with them because they cannot sleep the way they used to. And most of them are guessing wrong. Today, I am going to walk you through exactly what your body actually needs after 70, why the old advice you have been following might be working against you, and how to finally figure out the bedtime that is right for you, not for your neighbor, not for your spouse, not for some general rule you read on the internet, but for you. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something, and I really do want you to answer this in the comments below. What time do you go to bed right now, and what time do you naturally wake up? Type it below before you keep watching. I read every comment, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you are going to want to come back and tell me if your answer changed. Now let's get into it. Let's start with something that happens to almost everyone as they get older, and it can feel a little bit unsettling the first time you notice it. You are sitting in the living room after dinner, maybe watching the news or a show with your family. Suddenly your eyelids feel heavy. It is only 8:30 or 9 o'clock, but you feel like you could fall asleep right there in the chair. Meanwhile, your children or your grandchildren are wide awake, laughing, scrolling on their phones, completely unaffected. You might think to yourself, what is wrong with me? Why am I so tired so early? Here is the truth, and I want you to really hear this. There is very likely nothing wrong with you at all. This is one of the most common and most misunderstood changes that happens with age, and once you understand why it happens, it stops being scary and starts being something you can actually work with. Your body has an internal clock. Scientists call it the circadian rhythm. But you do not need to remember that term. Just think of it as your own personal built-in alarm system that has been running quietly in the background of your life since the day you were born. This internal clock tells your body when to release the hormones that make you feel sleepy and when to release the hormones that wake you up and keep you alert. When you were younger, that clock was tuned to a certain rhythm. Maybe you stayed up late, slept in a little, and your body was comfortable with that pattern for decades. But as you move through your 60s and into your 70s and beyond, that internal clock naturally shifts. For a lot of people, it shifts earlier. You start feeling sleepy earlier in the evening, and as a direct result, you often wake up earlier in the morning, too. This is not a flaw. This is not you falling apart. This is simply your biology changing shape, the same way your biology changed shape when you went through puberty or when women went through menopause. It is a transition, not a malfunction. Now, here is where so many older adults get tripped up, and I really want you to pay close attention to this part, because I think it is the single most important idea in this entire video. There is no universal bedtime that is correct for every person over 70. I know that might not be the answer you were hoping for when you clicked on this video. Maybe you wanted me to say the perfect bedtime is 9:15, write it down, set your alarm, done. But that would actually be bad advice because your ideal bedtime depends on a combination of things that are unique to you. It depends on when your body naturally wants to wake up. It depends on your daily routine, your energy levels, your health conditions, your medications, and how much quality sleep you are actually getting right now. What matters far more than hitting some specific clock number is making sure you are getting enough total sleep, and that you are doing it on a schedule your body can count on. So, let's talk numbers for a moment, because I know a lot of you are wondering exactly how much sleep you should be aiming for at this stage of life. According to the National Institute on Aging, adults over 70 generally still need approximately 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night. I want you to really sit with that number for a second, because there is a myth floating around out there that older people simply need less sleep as they age, that 4 or 5 hours is somehow enough once you hit a certain birthday. That is not accurate. Your need for sleep does not shrink dramatically just because you have gotten older. What often changes is the quality and the pattern of your sleep, not the total amount your body requires to function well. Your brain still needs that 7 to 9 hour window to consolidate memories, to repair tissue, to regulate your mood, and to keep your immune system working the way it should. So, if 7 to 9 hours is the target, how do you figure out when to actually go to bed? This is where I want you to completely change the way you have been thinking about this. Most people ask the wrong question. They ask, what time should I go to sleep? Instead, I want you to ask a smarter question, one that will actually get you a useful answer. Ask yourself, what time do I need to wake up? Once you know your wake up time, you can work backward from there. This is really the heart of everything I am going to share with you today, so let me walk you through a couple of examples to make it crystal clear. Let's say you know that you need, or simply prefer, to wake up around 6 o'clock in the morning. Maybe you have a routine, a dog that needs walking, a habit of watching the sunrise with your coffee. Whatever it is, 6 a.m. is your number. If you work backward from 6 a.m. and you want that full 7 to 9 hours of sleep opportunity, you are looking at a bedtime somewhere between 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock the night before. That is not one single magic number, it is a window, and where you land inside that window depends on your own natural sleepiness. Now let's take another example. Say you tend to wake up a little later, around 7:30 in the morning, maybe because your mornings are less structured, or you simply sleep in more comfortably. If that is your wake time, then a bedtime somewhere around 10:30 to 11 o'clock at night would give you a similar amount of total sleep opportunity. Do you see the pattern here? It is not about copying somebody else's schedule. It is about understanding your own wake-up time and then counting backward to protect that 7 to 9 hour window. I want to pause here and ask you to do something. In the comments, tell me your usual wake-up time. Just that one piece of information. Once you know that number, so much of the rest of this becomes simple math. And I promise you, reading through the comments on this video and seeing everyone's different patterns is going to remind you that there is no one-size-fits-all answer here. And that is actually a really freeing thing to realize. Now, I want to address something that I think trips up a huge number of people over 70, and it might be tripping you up too. There is this deeply ingrained belief that going to bed earlier automatically means better sleep. It sounds logical on the surface, right? More time in bed should equal more rest. But that is not actually how the human body works, and this misunderstanding causes a lot of unnecessary frustration. Here is what I mean. Let's say you go to bed at 7 o'clock in the evening because somewhere along the way you picked up the idea that older adults are simply supposed to sleep early, but your body is not actually tired yet. Your internal clock has not caught up to that early hour. What happens next? You lie there, you stare at the ceiling, you toss, you turn, you check the clock, you get frustrated, you check the clock again. An hour passes, maybe 2 hours, and you still are not asleep. Now here is the part that really matters. Over time, if this happens night after night, your brain starts to build an association between your bed and this feeling of frustration, of lying awake, of anxious waiting. Your bed, which should be a place of comfort and rest, slowly starts to feel like a battleground. Sleep specialists have a name for this pattern, and it can genuinely make insomnia worse over the long run, not better. So please hear me on this. Going to bed earlier is not automatically the answer. What actually matters is going to bed when your body is genuinely ready for sleep and protecting a consistent window so your body learns to trust that pattern. This brings me to what might be the single most powerful tool you have for improving your sleep after 70, and it is completely free. It requires no medication, no supplements, no special device. It is simply consistency. The National Institute on Aging specifically recommends keeping a regular sleep schedule, meaning you go to bed and you wake up at approximately the same time every single day, including weekends, including holidays, including the days when you do not feel like it. I know that might sound almost too simple to be the answer, but let me explain why it works so well. Especially as we age, think of your internal clock like a muscle that responds to training. When you go to bed at wildly different times, one night at 9, the next night at midnight, then 10:30, then 8, your body never quite knows what to expect. It is like trying to learn a new dance routine, where the music keeps changing tempo every few seconds. Your body cannot build a reliable rhythm because you keep interrupting the pattern before it has a chance to settle. But when you go to bed and wake up at roughly the same time day after day, your internal clock starts to anticipate it. Your body begins releasing sleep-promoting hormones like melatonin at approximately the same time each evening, preparing you for rest before you even lie down. And in the morning, your body starts naturally easing you toward wakefulness around the same time too, often before your alarm even goes off. This is not magic. This is simply your biology responding to a predictable pattern the same way it always has at every stage of your life. So if you currently fall asleep around 10 o'clock and wake around 6, the goal is not to chase some idealized bedtime you read about somewhere. The goal is to protect that pattern night after night as consistently as you possibly can. I want to know in the comments, are you someone who has a consistent bedtime already, or does your schedule bounce around depending on the day? Be honest, there is no wrong answer. I am genuinely curious how many of you already have this figured out and how many of you are working on it. Now let's talk about something that catches a lot of people off guard, and that is napping. Naps are not the enemy. A short nap earlier in the day can genuinely be refreshing for a lot of older adults, and there is nothing wrong with allowing yourself that rest if your body wants it. But here is where it can quietly sabotage your nighttime sleep without you even realizing what is happening. If you find yourself napping for a long stretch in the late afternoon or even into the early evening, you are essentially borrowing sleep from the nighttime hours. Your body has a certain amount of what scientists call sleep pressure that builds up throughout the day, kind of like water filling a bucket. By the time evening rolls around, that bucket should be close to full, which is what makes you feel appropriately sleepy at bedtime. But if you take a 2-hour nap at 4 in the afternoon, you are essentially draining some of that water out of the bucket right before you need it. Then, when 9 or 10 o'clock rolls around, you are not tired enough to fall asleep easily, and the whole cycle of lying awake and getting frustrated can start all over again. So if naps are part of your routine, and for many people they genuinely should be, try to keep them earlier in the day rather than late afternoon, and try to keep them relatively short. This one adjustment alone has helped a lot of people finally start falling asleep more easily at night. Let's move into the evening now, because what you do in the hours before bed matters just as much as what time you actually lie down. I want to talk about a few specific habits that quietly work against good sleep, and I would guess that at least one of these applies to you, so pay attention. First, let's talk about caffeine. Coffee, tea, chocolate, and even some soft drinks contain caffeine, and caffeine can interfere with your ability to fall asleep, especially later in life when your body may process it more slowly than it used to. If you are someone who enjoys an afternoon coffee or a cup of tea after dinner, and you also happen to struggle with falling asleep at night, that connection might not be a coincidence. I am not telling you to give up your morning coffee. Please do not come into the comments angry at me about that. I would never suggest that. But if you are having caffeine in the mid to late afternoon or evening, and you are also having trouble sleeping, that is worth paying attention to. Second, let's talk about alcohol, because this one surprises a lot of people. There is a common belief that a glass of wine or a drink before bed helps you sleep. And in a way, it can feel like that in the moment, because alcohol does have a sedative effect that can make you feel drowsy and help you fall asleep faster initially. But here is the part that gets left out of that conversation. As your body processes the alcohol throughout the night, it tends to disrupt the second half of your sleep. You might fall asleep quickly, but then find yourself waking up in the middle of the night, unable to fall back asleep or experiencing lighter, more fragmented sleep overall. So while alcohol might feel like it is helping in the short term, it is often working against you where it matters most, which is staying asleep through the night. Third, let's talk about large meals close to bedtime. The National Institute on Aging specifically suggests avoiding large meals within about 2 to 3 hours of going to sleep, and also being mindful of large amounts of liquid in the evening. This makes a lot of sense when you think about it practically. A heavy meal right before bed can leave you feeling physically uncomfortable, bloated, or dealing with acid reflux, all of which can interfere with falling asleep, and drinking a lot of fluid late in the evening increases the odds that you will wake up needing to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. Which brings me to something really important that I want to spend a moment on. You are someone who gets up at night to use the bathroom. Please make sure the path from your bed to the bathroom is safe. This might sound like a small detail, but it genuinely matters. Falls during nighttime bathroom trips are a real and common safety concern for older adults, and a lot of them are preventable with a few simple adjustments. Consider using a small nightlight along the path so you are not walking through complete darkness. Make sure there is nothing on the floor that you could trip over. No loose rugs, no cords, no clutter. If you use a cane or a walker during the day, keep it within easy reach at night too. These small changes take very little effort to set up, but they can make a real difference in keeping you safe during those groggy middle of the night moments. Now let's talk about something that almost everyone in this generation has in their bedroom, and that is a television, a phone, or a tablet. I know, I know for a lot of people, watching a bit of television is part of the wind down routine. It feels relaxing, it feels familiar, but here is what is actually happening when you do that right before bed. The light from these screens, combined with the mental stimulation of whatever you are watching or scrolling through, can actually work against your body's natural transition into sleep. The National Institute on Aging specifically recommends limiting electronic screens in the bedroom as part of a healthy sleep routine. Your brain needs cues that it is time to slow down, and a bright stimulating screen sends the opposite signal. So what should you do instead? I want to suggest something that has genuinely helped a lot of people, and it is called a wind down period. This is simply a stretch of about 30 to 60 minutes before your intended bedtime where you deliberately shift into calmer, quieter activities. This could look like reading a few pages of a book under a soft lamp. It could be listening to some quiet music. It could be doing some gentle stretching or breathing exercises. It could even just be sitting peacefully in a dimly lit room with your own thoughts, maybe reflecting on your day. The goal of this wind down period is simple. You are sending your brain a clear message that says the day is ending, it is time to slow down. Think of it like gently applying the brakes on a car well before you reach a stop sign, rather than slamming them at the last second. Your body responds so much better to a gradual transition than to an abrupt one. I would love to know in the comments, what does your current wind down routine look like? If you have one at all, do you read? Do you watch television? Do you just go straight from a busy evening into bed? There is no judgment here. I just think it would be really helpful for everyone watching this video to see what has worked for other people your age. Let's talk about your bedroom environment for a moment, because this is another piece of the puzzle that is easy to overlook. Your bedroom should feel comfortable, quiet, and dedicated to rest. Think about the temperature of the room. Most people sleep better in a room that is on the cooler side, rather than a warm one. Think about noise. If there are sounds in your environment that you cannot control, something like a soft fan or a white noise machine can help mask sudden noise lulls that might otherwise wake you. Think about light, heavy curtains or blackout shades can make a real difference if streetlights or early morning sun are creeping into your room. None of this needs to be expensive or complicated. Small, thoughtful adjustments to your environment can genuinely improve how well you sleep once you are actually in bed. Now, let's shift gears and talk about your daytime habits, because what happens during the day has a much bigger impact on your nighttime sleep than most people realize. Sunlight exposure is one of the most powerful and most underrated tools for regulating your internal clock. When you spend time outside during the day, especially in the morning, natural light helps reinforce the difference between daytime and nighttime for your body's internal rhythm. It essentially tells your brain, this is daytime, be alert, and then later, as darkness falls, your body naturally begins preparing for sleep. If you spend most of your day indoors with the curtains closed and artificial lighting, your internal clock can become confused about what time of day it actually is, which can make it harder to fall asleep at the appropriate time at night. So here is something simple you can try. If you are able to, spend some time outside during the day. Even something as simple as sitting on a porch, taking a short walk, or having your morning coffee near a sunny window. This daily dose of natural light can help anchor your circadian rhythm in a way that makes falling asleep at night noticeably easier for a lot of people. Exercise is another piece of this puzzle. Regular physical activity, appropriate to your ability and your doctor's guidance, of course, genuinely supports better sleep. Movement during the day helps build that natural sleep pressure I mentioned earlier, the same bucket that fills up throughout the day and helps you feel appropriately tired by bedtime. However, timing matters here too. The National Institute on Aging recommends avoiding vigorous exercise within about 3 hours of bedtime if it tends to interfere with your ability to fall asleep. Exercise raises your body temperature and stimulates your nervous system, and for some people, doing this too close to bedtime can actually make it harder to wind down. If you enjoy an evening walk and it does not seem to affect your sleep, That is perfectly fine. Everyone is a little different. But if you have been exercising late in the evening and also struggling to fall asleep, that timing might be worth adjusting. Now, I want to address something really important, something that I think every single person over 70 watching this video needs to hear clearly. Because there is a lot of unnecessary worry floating around this topic. Waking up once during the night does not automatically mean you have a serious sleep problem. I want to say that again because I think it is genuinely comforting information. Waking up once during the night does not automatically mean something is wrong with you. As we age, sleep naturally becomes a bit lighter and a bit more fragmented compared to when we were younger. It is common for older adults to wake more frequently during the night, and sleep in general can become somewhat shorter and less deep with age. This is a normal part of how sleep architecture shifts over the decades of a human life. If you wake up once, use the bathroom and drift back to sleep within a few minutes, that is not necessarily a red flag. That is simply part of the aging sleep pattern that a lot of people experience. However, and this is an important however, persistent sleep problems should not simply be dismissed or blamed entirely on aging. There is a difference between occasionally waking up once during the night and dealing with ongoing disruptive sleep difficulties. If you find yourself regularly struggling to fall asleep in the first place, if you repeatedly wake during the night and cannot seem to fall back asleep no matter what you try, if you feel extremely sleepy during the day, despite spending enough time in bed, or if you consistently wake up, feeling exhausted rather than refreshed, these are signs worth discussing with your healthcare professional. These patterns are not something you simply have to accept as an unavoidable part of getting older. Sleep disorders such as insomnia and sleep apnea genuinely do become more common as we age, and the encouraging news is that both of these conditions can often be treated effectively once they are properly identified. I want to spend a moment specifically on sleep apnea, because I think it deserves particular attention, and it is something that often gets caught not by the person experiencing it, but by someone else in the household. If a spouse, a family member, or anyone who has been around you while you sleep has mentioned that you snore loudly, that you seem to gasp or choke during the night, or that you appear to stop breathing for moments at a time while asleep, please do not brush that off as simply a quirky habit or something to laugh about. These can be signs of sleep apnea, a condition where breathing repeatedly stops and starts during sleep. It is genuinely worth bringing up with a doctor because untreated sleep apnea does not just affect how rested you feel, it can have a real impact on your heart health, your blood pressure, your memory, and your overall safety, including an increased risk of daytime drowsiness that can affect things like driving. I know some of this might feel a little heavy, so let me bring us back to why any of this actually matters in your day-to-day life. Good sleep is not just about feeling less tired the next morning, although that is certainly a wonderful benefit on its own. Quality sleep genuinely supports your brain function, your mood, your physical health, and your ability to fully engage with your day. The National Institute on Aging notes that inadequate sleep can contribute to real problems, including difficulties with memory, changes in mood, and an increased risk of falls or accidents. Think about how connected all of these things are. When you are well rested, you are more likely to feel steady on your feet, more likely to remember where you put your glasses, more likely to feel patient and present with your grandchildren, more likely to enjoy your hobbies and your conversations and your daily walks. Sleep is not a small, separate piece of your health that exists in isolation. It is deeply woven into nearly everything else that makes up a good day. I want you to think about sleep the same way you think about eating nutritious food, staying physically active, managing your medications properly, and staying socially connected with the people you care about. It belongs right there alongside those other pillars of health. It is not an afterthought. It is not something you deal with only when it becomes a problem. It is something worth actively caring for, the same way you care for the rest of your health. So let's bring this all together now, because I know we have covered a lot of ground, and I want to leave you with something clear and practical that you can actually use starting tonight. Instead of chasing some magical, universal bedtime number, I want you to start paying attention to your own body's signals. Notice when you naturally start to feel sleepy in the evening. Notice what time you tend to wake up in the morning, even without an alarm. Use that wake-up time to work backward and figure out a bedtime window that gives you the opportunity for 7 to 9 hours of sleep. For a lot of people over 70, that window tends to fall somewhere between 9 and 11 o'clock at night, but please remember, your personal pattern might look different, and that is completely okay. Once you have a general window in mind, protect it with consistency. Go to bed and wake up at approximately the same time every day, even on weekends, even when your schedule feels flexible. Build yourself a calm 30 to 60-minute wind-down routine before that bedtime, something that tells your brain the day is coming to a close. Be mindful of caffeine and alcohol in the afternoon and evening. Avoid large meals and excessive fluids close to bedtime. Keep late afternoon naps short, or better yet, move them earlier in the day. Get outside during daylight hours when you can, and stay physically active in a way that works for your body, just not too close to bedtime. Make your bedroom a place that is quiet, comfortable, and free from bright screens. And if you need to get up during the night, make sure that path is safe and well lit. And please remember this last piece, because I think it might be the most important takeaway of the entire video. Getting older does not mean you have to simply accept poor sleep as some unavoidable normal part of aging. Yes, your sleep patterns may shift and change as the years go on. That part is completely natural. But consistently poor sleep, night after night, week after week, is not something you just have to live with in silence. It deserves your attention, and it deserves a conversation with your doctor if it continues. You do not need a complicated, expensive nighttime routine to sleep well after 70. In most cases, what your body actually needs is far simpler than that. It needs consistency. It needs comfort. It needs enough time set aside for genuine rest. And it needs a little bit of patience while you figure out what truly works best for you. Because here is the thing I want you to walk away with today. Better health tomorrow can genuinely begin with something as simple and as achievable as preparing your body for a good night's sleep tonight. Before we wrap up, I want to walk you through a quick example, because I think sometimes hearing how this plays out for one specific person makes everything click a lot faster than just hearing general advice. Let's imagine someone named Robert. Robert is 75 years old. For years, Robert forced himself to go to bed at 8 o'clock every night because his late father always told him that older folks need to sleep early, and that idea just stuck with him. The problem is, Robert was not actually sleepy at 8 o'clock. His body simply was not ready. So night after night, Robert would lie in bed wide awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the clock tick, growing more and more frustrated as the minutes passed. By the time he actually fell asleep, it might have been 10:30 or 11, which meant he was only getting a fraction of the rest he needed before his alarm went off at 6. Over time, Robert started to dread bedtime. His bed, which should have felt like a place of comfort, started to feel like a source of stress. Then Robert tried something different. Instead of forcing an early bedtime, he paid attention to when he actually started feeling sleepy, and it turned out that was closer to 9:30. He also built himself a simple 30-minute wind-down routine, reading a few pages of a mystery novel under a soft lamp instead of watching the late news. He moved his afternoon coffee earlier in the day, and he stopped taking long naps after 4 in the afternoon. Within about 2 weeks, Robert noticed something remarkable. He was falling asleep within 15 or 20 minutes of lying down, instead of lying awake for over an hour. He was still waking up around 6, but now he actually felt rested when he got up, rather than groggy and frustrated. Nothing about Robert's situation involved medication or anything complicated. It was simply a matter of aligning his bedtime with his body's actual rhythm, instead of an arbitrary number he had been told to follow decades earlier. I share Robert's story because I think a lot of you watching this might see a piece of yourselves in it. Maybe you are not forcing yourself to bed at 8 o'clock, but maybe there is some other habit, some old belief about sleep that you picked up somewhere along the way that is quietly working against you without you even realizing it. I would genuinely love to hear about that in the comments too. Was there ever a piece of sleep advice you followed for years, only to later find out it was not actually helping you? I bet a lot of people watching this have a story just like that. I also want to briefly mention something that does not get talked about enough, and that is the role medications can play in sleep quality as we age. Many older adults are managing one or more health conditions, and that often means taking multiple medications. Some medications, including certain blood pressure medications, Medications for depression, steroids, and even some over-the-counter options like decongestants can affect sleep either by making you drowsier than expected or by interfering with your ability to fall or stay asleep. If you have noticed a change in your sleep pattern around the same time you started a new medication, that is absolutely worth mentioning to your doctor or pharmacist. You do not need to figure this out alone, and you should never stop or adjust a medication on your own without guidance. But bringing it up as a possibility during your next appointment is a completely reasonable and often very helpful thing to do. I also want to gently touch on something emotional, because sleep is not just a physical process, it is deeply tied to how we feel mentally as well. A lot of older adults carry quiet anxiety around sleep itself. You go to bed already worrying, will I fall asleep tonight? Will I wake up at 3 again? Will I feel exhausted tomorrow? And here is the difficult truth about that kind of worry. The anxiety itself can actually make sleep harder to come by. Your mind becomes alert and watchful right at the moment it needs to relax and let go. If this sounds familiar to you, please know that you are not alone in this, and it is a genuinely common experience, not a personal failing. Simple techniques like slow breathing, gently reminding yourself that one restless night is not a catastrophe, and building that calming wind-down routine we talked about earlier can help ease some of that pre-sleep anxiety over time. And if it feels like more than you can manage on your own, conversation with your doctor about it is always a reasonable and worthwhile step. There are effective, gentle approaches available, and you do not have to just white-knuckle your way through it. One more thing I want to leave you with before we close out this video. Try not to measure the success of a night's sleep purely by glancing at the clock the moment you wake up during the night. I know it is tempting to check, but doing that often backfires. You see that it is 2 in the morning, and suddenly your brain starts doing math, calculating exactly how many hours you have left before your alarm goes off, and that mental math tends to create more stress, which makes it even harder to drift back to sleep. If you wake up during the night, try to resist the urge to check the time. Instead, focus on staying relaxed, keep the lights low, and trust that your body knows how to find its way back to sleep without you supervising every single minute of the process. Now, before you go, I have a real favor to ask you, and I would genuinely appreciate it if you took 30 seconds to do this. Scroll down and leave a comment. Tell me your current bedtime and your current wake-up time. Tell me if anything in this video surprised you, or if there was a specific tip that you are going to try tonight. Maybe it is adjusting your afternoon nap, maybe it is cutting off caffeine earlier, maybe it is finally talking to your doctor about that snoring your spouse keeps mentioning. Whatever it is, write it down in the comments, because I promise you, there are thousands of other people watching this exact same video who are dealing with the exact same questions you are, and your comment might be the thing that helps someone else feel less alone in this. Sleep struggles can feel isolating, especially in the middle of the night when everyone else in the house seems to be sleeping peacefully. But you are far from alone in this, and this community in the comment section is proof of that every single time. If this video helped you even a little bit, do me a favor and give it a thumbs up. It genuinely helps this information reach more people who need to hear it. And if you have not already, consider subscribing to this channel, because we talk regularly about practical, real-world health information specifically for people in this stage of life. No confusing jargon, no unrealistic advice, just clear, useful guidance you can actually apply starting today. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Take care of yourself, be gentle with your body as it changes, and I will see you in the next video. Now go ahead, scroll down, and leave that comment. I really do want to hear from why